Ryan Chismark, Chismark, sorry.
Chismark, yeah.
Ryan Chismark, partner of Meritax Advisors. Thank you so much and welcome to Eye on Politics.
Thank you for having me, Jack.
So we are going to be talking about property tax reform. A lot of people are talking about it. And before we get started, I wanted to ask you, how is this your world? You wrote a 53-page report on property tax reform. So how did this become in your wheelhouse?
Well, I started my career working in county government and economic development. So that's my first introduction into incentives, abatements, how the system works. And over my career, I've gone through real estate and progressed into property tax consulting and really developed an expertise around property tax policy in Texas and outside of this state. And
so we have proposals from Governor Abbott and the Lieutenant Governor. And Governor Abbott has proposed capping appraisals from 10% now to 3% and going from a yearly appraisal to every 5 years. He also wants to, in addition to all that, he also wants to have a constitutional amendment to end school property taxes on homesteads. The Lieutenant Governor came out with a different proposal, and it basically is a continuation of what they have been doing. So raising the homestead exemption even further, but also now, right now, 65-year-olds and older have frozen property values on their homestead, school taxes.
That's right.
And now the Lieutenant Governor wants to lower that threshold to 55. So what do you make of those plans? First, of the governor's plan.
Well, a lot to unpack there, and certainly in the governor's plan, which had 5 or 6 points, and it's taken a few different iterations since it's initially been announced. Starting with the governor's plan, he has a traditional, what we call cap and cut plan. So in that paper that you alluded to, the Chismark paper, I identified a centralized place where we could go through case studies of states that have implemented cap and cut policies, cap assessments, cut spending, 5-year reassessment cycle is what he proposed. There are other states that have proposed these things. These policies have all failed in every instance.
How so?
They have created a few different things. The first is inequities between new home buyers and people that have been in their homes maybe 20 years.
And explain what that means.
Yeah, so if you have a first-time home buyer, they are buying an asset close to market value. Whereas if somebody, let's say, bought their house in 1995 and they have caps at 3% a year, they have not kept pace with inflation. So what you'll see is their home value is down here, whereas the new home buyer is way up here. They're paying inherently more for a house that might be across the street, same vintage, all else equal. So it shifts a burden to the new home buyers. And what that ultimately does is takes more money out of the pot that we need to fund basic infrastructure. So we've seen this in states where we have cap and cut policies in big growth economies. The first thing they do is say, okay, we need to cap, we need to cut, we need to slow this down. But really, what you need to do is make sure that assessments occur every year, that properties are assessed at market value, you have stewards of spending, and you have fiscal responsibility. So if you have assessments that are annual in nature, and you continue to use the surplus that you have at the state level to buy down rates, you have an equitable system. And by the way, that's what we have in Texas right now. We are the darling of the United States in property tax systems, and yet here we are making a wholesale change or a proposal of a wholesale change to create a system that is very, very remarkably similar and frighteningly so of Prop 13 in California. In the 70s, they had a very similar structure. They had a booming, robust economy, and they had an affordability challenge. We don't need to pit affordability of a homeowner against economic prosperity. They can coexist. And by the way, by and large, they have been in Texas since the governor has been in office.
But the issue for a lot of people is that their property appraisals keep going up, right? Because the counties keep raising it to the max. They can go up to 10%, right? And so that goes up to the max, and people feel as if maybe their school taxes have gone down, but they don't feel it because of local spending.
That's exactly right.
Right? So that's how people feel. People are very frustrated over this. They're angry about it. They feel as if they buy their home, they pay off their home, but the government still owns it, is what we hear a lot, right?
That's right.
Is that justifiable? That people feel that way, number one, and number two, what do you think the solution is?
Yeah, and that's why the soundbite of cap and cut has worked well and it has gotten traction, but it sounds good and it doesn't work, and it never has. And so on the local spending side, let's address that. I don't think we have enough transparency into local spending. I think when I get a bill, it says City of Dallas, and it has a mill rate, it has my assessment, and it has the taxes associated with that. The underlying things that it's funding within the city, I'm not sure if that's right size. I don't know if they're being stewards of my tax dollars. In 2025, where we've incentivized the largest tech companies in the world to come into our backyard to build these robust data centers in places like Abilene and across the state, if we're incentivizing them, in exchange, we should ask that they have a seat at the table. And they help us to plan for meaningful infrastructure growth, for population, for school district, for water planning, for our electrical grid. Let's create transparency between the state and local governments. Let's create transparency between the taxpayer and the local jurisdiction. And let's have forecasted planning on costs so that when we get to a place where, to use DFW as an example, Salina and Prosper and all this growth that happened to the north, we're not so reactionary in our spending. We see that there's going to be population growth there. We can plan so that businesses can continue to grow there. We can free up inventory so more supply comes online for homeowners, which brings down prices inherently. So the cost side is a reasonable argument, and I think that both the governor and lieutenant governor's plans address that as an item that really needs to be looked into this session. I agree with that.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, the governor and the lieutenant governor's plans do call for really trying to squeeze the locals,
Correct.
City, the county, the community college districts, and the hospital districts, and other special districts. Let me ask you what your thought was on the lieutenant governor's plan, the extension, raising the homestead exemptions. Under his plan would be from $140,000 this year to $180,000, which would start in maybe 2027 if it's approved. And then for people over 65, it would go from $200,000 now to $240,000. And then for this new group of 55 to 65, it would be from $140,000 now to $240,000. So that group would get the biggest slice of the pie, I guess, biggest increase in homestead exemptions, and see their school property taxes on their homesteads frozen.
That's right. Much easier to get our head around. So let me make it a relatable example that's easy for everyone to understand. Texans love football, right? Governor Abbott's plan, going back to his plan, we talked about cap and cut. But think about what he has done leading up to this point. He's delivered more property tax relief, to his credit, than any other governor in Texas history, and maybe in the national conversation as well. He's done that with the lieutenant governor at his side, and it's gone through both the House and Senate. So these are pre-vetted, but that package has provided relief, and that has been pretty well documented. Now, imagine being on a football field, the governor's driving down the field, it's 4th and goal from the 1 to win the game. He's had all this success with this plan up until this point, and he punts. He caps, he cuts, he reassesses every 5 years. Now the lieutenant governor, he says, wait a second, we have a plan that's winning, let's finish the job. Let's go ahead and take the exemptions that we had for seniors and expand it to include half of seniors of the entire state. Let's go ahead and expand homestead exemptions for all Texans. And by the way, we agree, let's look at this spending. Let's stay the course and provide the relief. That is the right path of the options on the table. We don't need to bulldoze the ranch to fix a fence post. We have the system that people look to across the country to say, wow, what do we want to look like? We have that in place. Now we need to tweak it and we need to advance the ball. But let's slow down the conversation around elimination of property taxes for a second. You and I have talked about this earlier. We talk about eliminating property taxes. Let's take it up here for a second. GDP-wise, Texas is the 8th largest economy in the world if it were a nation. That's huge. We're talking about the funding source, property taxes, a largest revenue source of the 8th largest economy in the world. People are saying, just get rid of it. I want people to be very thoughtful around long-term strategic planning and revenue sources that can replace property taxes if you're not going to do what other states have done, which is increase sales tax or impose an income tax. Right now, tax experts that the governor has access to, by the way, they have said, and I am saying, that there is no viable path immediately to remove property taxes entirely from the system. That messaging needs to change because it's inflammatory and it's not productive. And we're close, we're on the right path, let's stay the path.
So let's talk about a couple of things that you would like to see as part of a plan. You think, because affordability is a huge issue.
Absolutely.
And we know this, and especially for first-time home buyers, people can't afford it. So you're suggesting that there actually be an incentive for a first-time home buyer, the young family. Let's talk about that.
So when we look at the systems that have worked nationally, not just in property tax, but other funding sources, we have an endowment system in the state of Texas that funds public universities, and it's thriving. And we have some of the best public universities, arguably the best public university in the country. And in states like Alaska, that have a heavy dependency on oil and gas, they have royalty income. That royalty income, in part, is earmarked and cut checks back to the local citizens of that state. I propose an idea that could be interesting, which is an endowment for K through 12 education in Texas that we fund over time that would have only dividend income that goes towards buying down tax rates, that goes towards expanding homestead exemptions, and maybe eventually eliminating M&O entirely from the discussion over time. But let's have 30-year long-term strategic planning and a dedicated revenue source that's not a 2-year, we have a surplus, what do we do with it discussion. Because the thing that we know for sure in a capitalist society is our economy booms and it busts. And right now we are booming. But we will not always have a surplus. And if we are budgeting and planning future decisions and making future obligations with short-term revenue, that's a mistake. It's a mistake in personal finance. It's certainly a mistake if we're talking about the 8th largest economy in the world.
So you're talking about a long-term funding source for K through 12 schools.
That's right.
And do you think that's doable?
I do. I think it's very doable, and I think the proof is in the fact that we've already done it. It's just applying to a different discipline. And the question is, how quickly can we build that? Is it going to have enough funding in the near term to pay for all our obligations? No. But similar to when you save for retirement, you're not going to have all the money for retirement up front, but we need to start so that when we have these budget surpluses, if the governor's right and we have budget surpluses into the future for the next decade, and we can fund compression, we can fund exemptions, God bless him, he's right. But in the off chance that he's wrong, and we have a down year, do we have another source of funding that we've been planning for long-term that we can tap into, at least in part, to help relieve some of these obligations that we have long-term?
Well, we already have a rainy day fund.
That's right.
And a huge rainy day fund.
That's right.
Savings account, essentially. But we also have some of the oil and gas money that goes into transportation, for example.
That's right.
So you're saying set up something similar to that?
I think so. There's nothing new under the sun when it comes to this, and I think it's a mechanism that people could get around. I mean, it appeases a lot of different parties. It appeases the mother that wants to know that the school that she's sending her kids to is going to be well-funded and there for the long term, and it appeases the person who doesn't like the large tax liability that wants that to wind down quickly and sustainably. Those two voices are happy in this discussion, so let's do the right thing.
And I want to get back to the other question I had, just as far as like giving an incentive for first-time home buyers. How would you do that? What would you do?
Well, right now we've done a great job of catering towards seniors. We have senior exemptions and we have frozen values, and by the way, they've earned it. The question is, the first-time home buyers, they're the ones that have the biggest issue with affordability. I think a lot of viewers would be surprised to hear that most first-time home buyers are between the age of 35 and 38 in Texas. So I believe that owning a home is core to building out a strong family. And if that's what we're really solving to is family infrastructure in the state of Texas, and we believe that's the backbone of the economy, which I do, then we need to make sure that we can help them. So my idea is very simply, we give an exemption to first-time home buyers. They apply the same way they would with a homestead. Maybe they check a box, what have you. Administratively, we'll figure it out. They phase into taxation. So the first year, maybe they have an exemption of M&O, and then it phases out over time. The same way these other seniors are phasing out of taxation, the home buyers are phasing into taxation. And in the middle, we can continue to expand the homestead exemption so everyone gets relief. It's this natural passing of the baton, but we've left first-time home buyers out of the discussion. I think we need to introduce them. They're the ones that are taking all their nest egg and putting it into this home. They have the biggest squeeze in affordability. Let's help them out.
And have you talked to lawmakers about this idea?
I've proposed the idea. They say interesting idea. We'll see. So I'm hopeful that it's at least a discussion point that we can entertain. I think relative to the cost of some of these other programs, it's relatively nominal. We're still running the numbers, but I think it's maybe a half a $1 billion instead of $4 or $5 billion as some of the other proposals have cost.
Ryan Chismark, partner at Meritax Advisors. Thank you so much. Enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.